A voice floated through the window, smooth, careless, deadly. "Don't worry, she won't last long here." For a moment, I thought they were talking about someone else. Then I heard my name, and every step I took toward that house felt heavier than the last. "Before we go any deeper, tell me something. Where are you listening from tonight? Drop it in the comments because this space, we built it together. We've become a little family here, lifting each other up through stories like this. I'll be reading every single one, so come sit with us. And if you haven't yet, hit subscribe so you never miss a night with this family." I pulled up in front of my son's place with a peach cobbler still warm enough to fog up the plastic wrap. The smell reminded me of July nights back in Tennessee when my grandmother used to swear sugar healed the soul better than prayer. I wasn't sure that was true anymore. I walked toward the house carrying that heavy dish like it was a peace offering carved out of my own ribs. Inside, the noise hit me first. Laughter, glasses clinking, my daughter-in-law's folks hollering about some baseball game, and me. I swear I could have walked in wearing a neon sign reading "Still Alive" and it wouldn't have made a dent. Nobody glanced up. My son, Jason, did a little chin-lift hello before turning back to the grill like he owed it more loyalty than he owed his mother. I set the cobbler on the counter with a little sigh that slipped out by accident. The counter didn't even tremble. My grandkids blew past me chasing each other with those foam swords I hate. Not one tiny hug, not even a quick, "Hi Nana." I felt like the ghost of someone who used to matter. I tried to mingle, I asked about school, I asked who won the game. Someone brushed past me like I was furniture. I laughed once, one of those awkward little puffs of air people make when they want to be part of the moment. Nobody noticed. I could have disappeared on the spot and the party would have kept rolling. My daughter-in-law thanked me for coming without turning her head. Jason finally wandered over to me near the fridge. He said, "Mom, don't look so tense. Enjoy yourself," like I hadn't been trying for the last 10 years. Then he slapped my back too hard and trotted off, leaving me wobbling there like an unused umbrella. The thing that strung most wasn't the ignoring, it was the familiarity of it. This had become our pattern and I'd let it. I stood at the edge of the living room watching everyone carry on and felt something sharp flicker inside my chest. A little spark of anger, a little spark of grief, and maybe, just maybe, the faintest spark of change. At one point, my granddaughter tugged at her mom's sleeve and whispered something while glancing at me. Her mom shook her head. They both laughed. My stomach twisted itself into a knot so tight I had to step outside for air. The porch smelled like sunburnt wood and loneliness. I leaned against the railing, wondering when I had become a background character in my own family, a woman holding a cobbler nobody would eat. While the wind flicked my hair around, a strange idea crept into my mind, a wild, reckless idea that made me swallow hard. I wasn't sure where it came from, but I felt it anchoring itself inside me like a seed finally finding soil. I didn't know it yet, but the porch that day was the first step toward burning down an old life and building something startlingly new from the ashes, something just for me. And that seed, it was ready to bloom whether anybody liked it or not. Because the next morning, something happened that pushed me over the edge and made me question everything I'd ever given my family. I woke up the next morning with the same heaviness you feel after dreaming about running only to realize you never moved. My house felt too quiet for a Sunday. Even the refrigerator hummed like it was trying not to bother me. I shuffled into the kitchen, poured myself a cup of coffee, and stared at the half-finished crossword from the day before. The word neglected sat half-filled on the page, mocking me with its accuracy. My phone buzzed, a text from Jason, not a "good morning, Mom," not a "thanks for coming," just one line. "Did you take the Tupperware back? We can't find it." That was it, the whole message, like I was part of his kitchen inventory. I laughed, but it wasn't a happy sound, more like the kind of laugh someone makes when they're about to lose the last sliver of patience holding their sanity together. I typed back, "No, I didn't," then deleted it, typed, "It's on your counter," deleted that too. Eventually I just put the phone face down, felt childish, felt necessary. My chest tightened, not in a dramatic clutch your heart way, more like a slow squeeze, the kind that builds over years of being polite about your own erasure. I sat at the kitchen table breathing through it, trying to keep myself from slipping into that familiar posture, chin tucked, shoulders slumped, voice soft, the posture of someone who doesn't want to be a problem. I thought about yesterday, every laugh I wasn't part of, every memory they shared that didn't involve me. every time I stepped aside like I was making room for people who already had plenty of space. And then out of nowhere I started crying, not the loud kind, the quiet kind where the tears roll down your face without permission. I wiped them fast, annoyed at myself, but they kept coming anyway, stubborn little traitors. I whispered into the empty room, "I can't do this anymore." The words shocked me. They vibrated in the air like I'd said something forbidden. I'd never spoken them out loud before. I'd always told myself it wasn't that bad, that families were messy, that being needed was enough even if being loved wasn't always obvious. But that morning I felt something break, not like a snapped twig but like a cracked shell. Something inside me felt ready to hatch. I headed to the living room, packing like someone with news I hadn't heard yet. That's when I noticed the stack of mail on the coffee table, bills, medical pamphlets, and one bright white envelope addressed to me in thick blue ink. My heart sped up. It was from my lawyer, the one I'd met last year when Jason insisted I set up power of attorney, just in case. Just in case, the phrase felt different now, heavy, suspicious. I opened the envelope with shaky fingers. Inside was a reminder about reviewing estate documents before the new year, nothing dramatic, just routine paperwork. But staring at those words, I felt my pulse throb in my throat. I remembered how confidently Jason had said, "I'll handle everything when you're older," as if I was already halfway gone. My breath shivered, not from fear, something colder, realization. I had given my son control of decisions that should have always been mine. I had handed over keys to a house I wasn't ready to leave. A single thought rose up like a banner snapping in the wind. No more. That was the moment, right there at my coffee table, when the idea from the porch the day before finally formed into something solid, something sharp, something brave. I wasn't going to wait for anyone to see me anymore. I was going to make myself impossible to ignore. And that's exactly what pushed me to make a phone call that would flip my entire life upside down before the week was over. I stared at that letter so long the words began to blur. My fingertips felt warm against the paper, almost like the thing was alive and breathing back at me. Something inside me steadied, not calm exactly, but focused the way a person gets right before cutting their own hair. Reckless determination mixed with a little dread. I picked up my phone. My hand trembled so badly I almost dropped it. A tiny nervous laugh escaped me, shaky and ridiculous, like I was calling a crush and not an attorney. The number rang twice before a familiar voice answered. "You've reached Marisol Rivera's office. This is Hannah." Hearing Hannah's voice hit me with unexpected relief. She'd always spoken to me like I was a full human being, not an agging responsibility. "Hi, sweetheart," I said, my voice catching. It's Lucy Palmer. I need to speak with Marisol, as soon as she's available." There was a pause, one of those pauses where you know someone hears the storm in your voice, even if you didn't declare it out loud. "Are you all right, Miss Palmer?" "I will be," I said. That tremor in my voice wasn't fear anymore, it was something fiercer. "I need to make some changes." Hannah's tone softened. "I'll squeeze you in this afternoon, 2 o'clock. 2 o'clock sounded like jumping off a cliff, so naturally I said, "That works." The moment I hung up, a strange lightness swept over me. I walked to the window and pulled the curtain aside. The sky looked the same as it had the day before, same clouds, same sun, but everything in me felt tilted, like the world had shifted 10 degrees to the left. I kept replaying yesterday's party in my head, Jason laughing with his father-in-law, the kids darting past me like I was a coat rack, the peach cobbler untouched on the counter. I remembered the way I'd smiled through it all, that brittle smile I'd practiced for years, a habit built from politeness and fear that if I stopped being agreeable, I'd stop being welcome. My chest tightened again, but this time it wasn't sadness. It was anger, a softer anger, almost sorrowful, the kind you feel when you suddenly grasp just how small you've been making yourself. I sat at the kitchen table, tapping my nails against the wood. Each tap felt like a heartbeat. I thought about all the little ways I had allowed myself to shrink, saying yes when I meant maybe, saying maybe when I meant no, laughing at jokes that strung, offering help no one thanked me for, showing up even when nobody noticed. For years I thought that was love, but love isn't supposed to erase you. At one point I whispered into the empty kitchen, what would my life look like if I lived it for myself? The question startled me. It lingered in the air like smoke. The answer came as a flutter in my stomach, equal parts excitement and fear. My life would look different, my life could look better. The idea felt scandalous, delicious, dangerous. Then a new thought hit me with the force of a slap. What if Jason wasn't ready for me to reclaim my life, because he liked having control of it? My breath hitched, that possibility felt like ice water running down my spine. I hated thinking it, but avoiding a truth had never made it less true. At 1:45 I grabbed my purse and keys. My reflection in the hallway mirror looked older than I felt, but there was a spark in my eyes, something lively, something rebellious. Like the younger version of me was peeking through, whispering finally. I stepped out the door and locked it behind me. The click of that lock echoed with surprising finality. I wasn't just driving to see a lawyer, I was driving toward a version of myself I hadn't met yet. But nothing could have prepared me for what Marisol told me at that meeting, because her words didn't just confirm my suspicions, they exposed something far worse. Walking into Marisol's office felt like stepping into a room where secrets like to settle in the corners. The place always smelled faintly of lemon polish and ink, a scent that made me stand up straighter even when I didn't feel brave. Marisol looked up from her desk and gave me that steady smile of hers, the one that made me feel like I wasn't unraveling as dramatically as I actually was. "Lucy," she said warmly, "I had a feeling I'd be seeing you again." I let out a little breathy laugh. "You must be psychic because I'm falling apart in alphabetical order." She waved me to the chair. "Tell me what's going on." There it was, the invitation. The moment I had to either bury everything again or spit the truth onto the table like a confession. My throat tightened. I swallowed hard and started talking. I told her about the gathering, about the way my family drifted around me like I was made of glass they didn't want to touch, about the text from Jason and how ridiculously small it made me feel. The words tumbled out fast, faster than I expected, and at one point my voice cracked. A tiny sound, but it carried the weight of years. Marisol listened without interrupting, which somehow made the whole thing even more emotional. When I finished, she leaned back in her chair and steepled her fingers under her chin. "Lucy," she said gently, "when was the last time you looked at your estate documents?" I shrugged. "When Jason wanted everything set up, 2 years ago." Marisol nodded slowly, the way someone does right before dropping news you don't want but absolutely need. She pulled up some files on her screen, typed a few commands, and then turned the monitor slightly. "Your son has more control over your assets than you remember giving him." A chill shot through me so fast my fingers twitched. "What does that mean?" "It means," she said carefully, "that if something were to happen to you, illness, injury, he has the authority to make decisions about your home, your accounts, your medical choices, and some clauses give him decision-making power even if you're mentally capable." My heart thudded so loud I heard it in my ears. A shaky, hollow laugh escaped me. "That can't be right, I wouldn't sign something like that." "You might have." She wasn't being harsh, just honest in a way that strung. When people trust their children, they sign what's placed in front of them. It happens more often than you think. I sat back, stunned. My stomach felt like someone had turned it inside out and left it drying on a wire. My voice wobbled. "So if I wanted to sell my own house, he could override you?" My breath caught, not a gasp, something quieter, something that felt like a little piece of me collapsing in on itself. Marisol leaned forward. "But you're here now, and that tells me you're ready to change it." A soft weeping sound rose in my throat, one of those painful, trembling breaths that comes right before tears. I fought it, but one slid down my cheek anyway. I wiped it fast, too fast, my hand shook. "I didn't want to believe he'd take advantage of me," I whispered. "Wanting to believe in someone doesn't make them trustworthy," she said gently. That sentence hit me so hard I felt the air leave my lungs. I wasn't naive, I wasn't fragile. I was a mother who had mistaken gratitude for love and obligation for care. Marisol pushed a folder toward me. "We can revoke his authority today, but once we do he will find out." My heartbeat stuttered. Fear, yes, but underneath it, a flicker of something wild and powerful. "Freedom." "I want to do it," I said, voice trembling but firm. "I want my life back." Marisol nodded like she'd been waiting for that exact sentence. As I signed each document, my hand steadied. Every stroke of the pen felt like reclaiming a little piece of myself, a piece I hadn't realized I'd given away so quietly. When the final signature dried, Marisol closed the folder with a soft thud that sounded like a brand new beginning. I stood, legs trembling but strong. Walking out of that office felt like stepping into sunlight after living too long in a dim hallway. But the freedom buzzing through me didn't last long, because sitting in my driveway when I got home was a car I recognized instantly. Jason. And the look on his face told me he already knew something had shifted, something he wasn't going to let slide without a fight. Jason was leaning against his car like a man rehearsing a speech he didn't want to give. His arms were crossed, jaw tight enough to crack a tooth. The second I pulled into the driveway, my stomach dropped. My hands clenched the steering wheel, knuckles pale as winter sunlight. He didn't even wait for me to step out. "Mom," he said, voice sharp, "why'd I have to hear from Marisol that you're changing legal documents?" My heart thudded so loudly I felt it in my teeth. I stepped out of the car slowly, breathing through the tremor spreading under my ribs. "Because they're my documents," I said softly. "My choices." He barked a laugh, but it wasn't amused, Maury-like disbelief wrapped in irritation. "Why are you doing this? Did someone get in your head, that lawyer manipulating you?" Heat surged through me, anger mixed with a lifetime of swallowed words. "Nobody manipulated me," I said. "I'm thinking for myself." Jason shook his head, packing a few steps like he was trying to shake the argument out of his bones. "Mom, this isn't like you. You're acting, I don't know, paranoid." That word made something inside me flinch. It reminded me of every time he'd dismissed my feelings, every time I'd tried to speak up, and he nudged me right back into silence. "Paranoid?" I laughed, not the sweet kind, the kind that cracks at the edges. "If I'm paranoid, it's because I finally realized I handed you too much power." He turned to face me, eyes narrowing. "You asked me to help you, you trusted me." A sigh slipped through my lips, heavy and aching. "I trusted that you saw me as more than a responsibility." His posture shifted, defensive, offended. I always have." "No," I said gently, even though the truth stung. "You've seen me as someone who would always say yes, always agree, always step aside." My voice quivered. "You stopped seeing me as a person." Jason opened his mouth, closed it, opened it again. "That's not fair." "It's true." For a moment the air between us felt electric, tense enough to hum. My breath wavered. His did too. A long silence stretched, filled with everything we never talked about and probably should have. He rubbed the back of his neck. "So what now? You just cut me out." I felt a wave of grief rise inside me, warm, painful, familiar. "I'm not cutting you out. I'm drawing a line where there never should have been a blur." He kicked at a pebble near his shoe, muttering something under his breath. Frustration radiated off him like heat from asphalt. "I just don't get why you'd blindside me like this," he said finally. "Family is supposed to be a team. And a team doesn't bench someone and then act confused when they walk off the field," I whispered. That comment hit him harder than I expected. His face softened for a split second, a flicker of guilt slipping through before he buried it under annoyance again. "I need space, Jason," I said quietly. "Space to make my own decisions, to live my own life." He exhaled hard, long, like I just asked him to carry a refrigerator down a flight of stairs. "Fine," he said, "if that's how you want it." But the way he said it, tight, wounded, teetering on anger, made my chest ache. This wasn't the clean, empowering moment I imagined. It was messy, complicated, full of years of unspoken pain. He started walking toward his car. For a second I thought he'd turn back and ask if we could talk again, but he didn't. He got in, slammed the door a little too hard, and drove off without looking at me once. As the dust settled in my driveway, a tremor ran through me. Fear, sorrow, relief tangled into one dizzying wave. I pressed a hand to my chest, steadying myself. I had stood my ground. For the first time in a long time I had said what I needed, but doing the right thing didn't feel triumphant, it felt lonely. I walked into my house, and that's when I noticed something sitting on my kitchen table, something Jason must have left behind in his hurry, and the sight of it made my knees go weak. Because inside that forgotten item was a clue I never expected, one that hinted my son had been making decisions about my life long before I realized it. The house felt heavier when I walked in, like the air had been holding its breath since I left. I took 2 steps toward the kitchen and froze. Right there on the table, half covered by the napkin holder, was a folder I recognized, but definitely didn't put there. Jason's folder. My pulse quickened. I pulled it toward me with hesitant fingers, a feeling prickling along my spine. The front was labeled LP documents and notes. My initials. My throat tightened. I opened it carefully, almost afraid it might bite. Inside were papers, lists, and notes written in Jason's handwriting, his messy, rushed scrawl I used to tease him about when he was a kid. But nothing inside was funny. The first page was a checklist. Mortgage timeline. Insurance renewal. Mom's house appraisal estimates. Assisted living options shortlist. My breath hitched hard. A gasp escaped me before I could stop it. Assisted living options. My vision blurred for a second, and I had to blink to steady myself. I flipped to the next paper, hands shaking like loose shutters in a storm. There was a printed email thread with a realtor. Discussing my house. Discussing my house. Not hypothetically, not someday. But soon. My name wasn't even in the body of the email. They were talking around me the way doctors do when breaking bad news to family in the hallway. A trembling sigh slipped from me, the sound raw and disbelieving. My heart hammered painfully against my ribs. A strange numbness spread up my arms, like my body couldn't decide whether to shake or shut down. I flipped through more pages. Notes about my finances, reminders about meetings I didn't know existed, budget calculations. Even a schedule for when transition conversations should begin. Transition conversations. About my own life. Without me. Something inside me cracked, soft but catastrophic. Not dramatic, no screaming, just a deep internal snapping, like a branch breaking under the weight of too many winters. I sat down because I didn't trust my legs. My breath shook, uneven and shallow. A small laugh escaped me, one of those stunned, disbelieving little bursts of sound that come when reality suddenly tilts sideways. Was this why he'd been so defensive, so angry that I'd taken back control? Was he worried about my well-being, or worried about losing a plan he'd already started building without my permission? The loneliness hit first, cold and sharp. Then came the anger, slow, rising like a tide, filling me with a heat I hadn't felt in years, a heat that felt like being alive again. My son had planned out my future like he was organizing a garage sale, practical, efficient, clinical, and without one conversation about what I wanted. I whispered to the empty room, voice trembling, "You were ready to move me out of my own life." The words tasted bitter on my tongue. A wave of sorrow rolled through me, almost knocking me sideways. Memories flashed, Jason as a boy hugging my leg on the first day of kindergarten, Jason at 12 crying when the dog died and crawling into my arms, Jason at 20 calling me after his first heartbreak, voice shaking. When had we lost each other? When had I become a project to him instead of a person? I wiped my eyes with the back of my hand, angry at the tears because I wanted strength, not saltwater. But tears came anyway, warm, stubborn, unapologetic. Then something shifted. The tears didn't weaken me, they clarified me, like rinsing dust off glass. I gently closed the folder. Then I stood, my spine straightened on its own, taller than I had felt in years. My chest rose with a long, steady breath. If Jason had a plan for my life, then I needed a bigger plan, a stronger plan, a plan of my own. Not out of revenge. Out of self-preservation. I wasn't going to wait around for someone to usher me out of my own story. And I knew exactly who I needed to talk to next. Because the conversation I was about to have with someone unexpected didn't just change my plans, it revealed a truth about my past that hit harder than anything Jason had done. I didn't want to stay in that house another second with Jason's folder sitting there like a bomb made of paper and betrayal. I grabbed my keys, still trembling a little, and walked out the door before my courage had a chance to evaporate. The afternoon sun hit my face, warm and too bright, like the world didn't realize mine had just tilted off its axis. The person I needed to see wasn't family. He wasn't a friend either. He was someone I'd met by accident at the community center months ago. Arthur Pierce, a retired social worker with silver hair, a voice like warm gravel, and a habit of dropping unexpected wisdom into casual conversations. He once told me, people don't fall apart suddenly. They unravel quietly, thread by thread, until they realize they're cold. I had laughed then, I wasn't laughing now. I drove to the center, hoping he'd be there. and when I stepped inside, the familiar scent of old books and lemon cleaner hit me with a wave of comfort I didn't know I needed. Arthur was sitting in his usual spot by the window, sorting donated books into uneven stacks. His glasses were perched crookedly on the end of his nose. He looked up, and the moment his eyes met mine, his face softened. "Lucy, you look like you've been carrying a refrigerator on your heart." A shaky laugh slipped out of me. "Feels more like a whole appliance store." He motioned for me to sit. "Tell me what's going on." And I did, not the sanitized, polite version, the raw one, the one with anger and hurt tangled together like knotted wires. I told him about the confrontation, the folder, the plans Jason made without asking me. My voice cracked halfway through, and I felt tears rise again, unwanted but impossible to fight. Arthur listened the way trees listen, quiet, patient, steady. When I finished, he let out a long breath and leaned back. "I was afraid of this," he said softly. That pulled me up short. "Afraid of what?" He tapped the edge of his glasses, eyes thoughtful. "Your boy didn't invent this behavior out of thin air. It usually grows from somewhere, from patterns, from what children absorb before they know they're absorbing." I frowned. "Patterns?" He gave me a look so gentle I almost hated it. "Lucy, who taught you to shrink yourself?" The question punched the air out of me. I blinked, stunned. My mouth opened, but nothing came out. A wave of dizziness washed over me, not from shock but from recognition, because I knew exactly who he meant, and the memory of that truth settled in my chest like a heavy stone. "My mother," I whispered. Arthur nodded softly. "And who taught her?" I swallowed hard, my voice felt small. "Her father." "And so the thread runs," he murmured. The words echoed inside me, shaking loose memories I hadn't touched in years. My mother folding herself into apologies she didn't owe, muttering, "Don't make trouble, don't be difficult." Me learning at 7 years old that being quiet meant being safe, being agreeable meant being loved, or something close to it. Arthur wasn't accusing me, he was illuminating me. "You didn't invite this," he said gently, "but you did inherit it, and Jason inherited it from you, not the cruelty, just the expectation that you'd always bend." A warmth rose behind my eyes, not tears exactly, something fiercer, understanding, pain, resolve. Arthur placed his hand over mine, grounding me. The cycle only ends when someone refuses to bend anymore. I inhaled shakily. The air felt different going into my lungs, cooler, sharper, more awake. "I'm trying," I whispered. "You're doing," he corrected. "Trying is passive, doing is power." I let those words settle. Doing, power, me, 3 things I never thought belonged in the same sentence. Then he added something I wasn't expecting. "And Lucy, there's something I noticed about Jason months ago, something I didn't mention because it wasn't my place." My breath stilled. "What do you mean?" Arthur hesitated, jaw working like he was choosing his words with surgical precision. "What I'm about to tell you," he said slowly, "might explain why he's been acting this way, and it might hurt, but it will make everything clearer." A chill ran through me. Because what Arthur revealed next didn't just explain Jason's behavior, it cracked open a family secret I didn't know existed, one that sent me spiraling into a truth more painful than betrayal. Arthur's pause stretched so long I could hear the ticking of the old wall clock behind him, steady as a heartbeat. For a moment, I wished he'd just laugh and say he was being dramatic. Tell me it was nothing more than teen mood swings and my overworked imagination. But he didn't. His face carried the kind of weight nobody chooses to hold. He took a breath. "When I first met Jason," he began gently, "I noticed something familiar in the way he watched you." My stomach tightened. "Familiar how?" "That look kids get when they're guarding something they don't understand," he said. "A kind of fear that's shaped like loyalty." Fear, loyalty, those words sounded like oil and water. I blinked at him. What was he scared of? Arthur lowered his voice. "Losing you." My arms went cold, goosebumps rising. "Why would he lose me? I've never." He raised a hand, not to interrupt but to soften the jagged edge of the moment. "He wasn't afraid of you. He was afraid of people taking you away." The room dipped for a second, like gravity misfired. "Who would take me away?" I whispered. "That doesn't make sense." Arthur looked at me with a compassion so deep it felt like a soft break inside my chest. "Lucy, someone told him once that you weren't supposed to be in his life. Someone told him you didn't belong. A wild, breathless laugh escaped me. What, that's insane. He gave a slow, sad nod. But to a kid, it wasn't insane, it was truth, and he grew up carrying it. The world around me blurred for a moment. Who told him that? I don't know, he admitted, but I know when. He was 8 and he was devastated. My mouth went dry. 8. The same year my mother and I barely spoke for months. The same year she kept telling me I was too soft to raise a boy alone. The same year she tried. She tried to convince me to give up custody after my divorce. I stared at Arthur, heartbeat hammering. No, she wouldn't, she couldn't. But the certainty I wanted to feel wasn't there. My mother's voice echoed in my memory, too many warnings, too many backhanded compliments, too many ways she taught me that power belonged to everybody else. Arthur studied my expression, quietly reading the storm. You're connecting dots I can't see, he said softly. I pressed a shaking hand to my forehead. Everything in me buzzed with disbelief and possibility, tangled so tightly they hurt. My mom, I said hoarsely. She always said things that made me feel like I was failing him, but I didn't think she'd actually tell my child he didn't belong to me. The thought ripped through me so fast I felt nauseous. And then another possibility hit me so hard my breath stumbled. Wait, I whispered. If he thought I didn't belong in his life, then all this controlling, all this pushing me away, trying to build something without me. Arthur nodded gently. He was trying to prepare for the day he believed you'd disappear. A sound escaped me, half sob, half laugh, full heartbreak. The weight of it crumpled my shoulders. All the anger, all the confusion, all the ways I felt steamrolled by him, it twisted suddenly into something deeper, something raw, something tragic. He wasn't discarding me. He was protecting himself. Because some adult, maybe my own mother, had planted a lie in his childhood that grew into the monster we were wrestling now. Arthur leaned forward, eyes kind but unflinching. You can't fix what you don't face. You'll need to talk to him, really talk, and you'll need the truth before you do. My pulse thudded hard against my ribs. Then I need to talk to my mother. His brows lifted. Are you ready for that? No, I admitted, but I can't move forward without knowing. I stood, legs shaky but determined. For the first time in a long while, my fear wasn't running the show. It was just sitting in the back seat, complaining quietly. Thank you, I said to Arthur, for not sugarcoating this. He smiled softly. Sugar hides the rot. True, and my family tree was starting to smell like something decayed. I walked toward the door, each step thick with dread and urgency. The air outside hit my face like a slap, bracing and bright. I pulled out my phone, thumb hovering over Mom's name. My pulse fluttered, nervous and boiling. I didn't know what she'd say, but I knew she'd built walls around the truth, and I was done walking around them. Because when my mother finally answered that call, the first sentence out of her mouth confirmed that the secret between us wasn't new, and it was far more twisted than I ever imagined. The phone barely rang once before she picked up, which startled me more than anything she could have said. My mother was the kind of woman who let calls go to voicemail so she could rehearse whatever persona she planned to wear. But this time she answered instantly, breath sharp, as if she'd been expecting me. Her voice slid through the speaker, thin and tight. Lucy, if this is about Jason, I didn't do anything wrong. My legs buckled, and I had to lean against my car just to stay upright. That sentence, those exact words, were a confession without a single detail. My throat went dry as sand. I didn't ask anything yet, I said quietly. She inhaled sharply, the sound crackling like old glass. Well, I just assumed. I pushed off the car, packing a shaky line in the parking lot. Then let's talk about why you'd assume that. She didn't answer. I heard background noise, a faint clatter, maybe a cabinet door closing. It wasn't like her to stay silent. That scared me more than her defensiveness. Mom, I said, trying to keep my voice steady, I need you to tell me exactly what you told him when he was little. A small, bitter laugh escaped her. People blow things out of proportion. Childhood memories twist. You shouldn't rely on whatever he claims he remembers. He never said a word, I snapped too quickly. Someone else told me something happened, and the way you just reacted, it's screaming at me. Her tone shifted, like she'd slipped into the version of her that always made me feel 12 again, foolish, emotional, unprepared. I was only trying to help you. My teeth clenched. By telling my son I didn't belong in his life. She exhaled hard. You were drowning after the divorce. You moved back here with nothing but a suitcase and that broken little apartment. I thought, if he believed he might lose you, maybe it would make him behave. You were so soft with him, I had to scare him straight. A cold wave rolled through me so intense it felt like my insides iced over. Scare him straight, my voice cracked. He was 8, a kid, my kid. You don't understand, she insisted. He needed structure, boundaries, fear. That boy was too attached. If anything, I was doing him a favor, preparing him for reality. My mind spun, nausea clawing up my throat. Reality? Mom, he thought I was going to leave him. He thought I wasn't even supposed to be in his life. Do you realize what that did to him, to us? Her voice sharpened like a knife. I kept you both afloat. I made sure you didn't crumble. By breaking him, my voice shook. By planting a lie that grew into every messed up thing between us. She sucked in a breath. You're exaggerating. I could feel tears burning behind my eyes, but I willed them back. Do you know he still acts like I'm temporary, like I'm fragile, like I'm an inconvenience he has to manage? That came from somewhere, and now I know where. Her silence stretched, thick as tar. I could hear her guilt trying to claw its way out, but she kept locking it back down under pride. I did what I thought was right, she whispered. And you did damage I'm still cleaning up, I said softly. My voice broke on the last word, not from rage, from the hollow ache of finally seeing the shape of the wound. She sighed, long and wavering. So what do you want from me? An apology? Fine, I'm sorry, there, happy. I pressed my forehead against the car window, eyes stinging. I don't need happy, I need truth, real truth. She didn't respond, but her breathing changed, trembling enough I could hear it. For a moment, neither of us moved, suspended in the kind of silence that only exists when two people know something irreversible just cracked open. Mom, I said quietly, what else did you tell him? The wind lifted around me, cool against my hot skin, waiting with me. Her answer, the one she finally forced out, burned deeper than the first secret. Because it wasn't just about what she told him. It was about what she told everyone else. And when she revealed who she'd whispered that lie to besides my son, my entire understanding of the past, and the person I thought betrayed me, shattered in a way I never saw coming. I stared at the empty living room, the sunlight spilling across the floor like it was mocking me. For years this house had been my whole world, well, my world tied up in everyone else's plans. The echo of my footsteps felt strange, foreign, like I was walking through someone else's life. I picked up an old photo album, the one with the faded pictures of my late husband and the kids when they were little, and I felt a tight knot in my chest. It wasn't just nostalgia, it was the weight of realizing how little of my own happiness I'd claimed for myself. Sigh, how did I let life slide by like that? I wandered into the kitchen and grabbed a mug, my hands shaking just a little. Tea would fix this, right? But as I stirred, I caught sight of a dusty recipe book on the counter. Memories came flooding back, Sunday mornings making cinnamon rolls with my daughter, laughing so hard that flour ended up on the ceiling, on her hair, everywhere. I laughed softly to myself, and then it hit me. Maybe it wasn't too late to start baking for me, for my joy, not for anyone else. And then the phone rang. It was my son Alex. My stomach dropped. I hadn't really spoken to him since I decided to take my life back. I hesitated, thumb hovering over the green button. I could hear his voice, even without answering, full of hesitance, maybe guilt. But I didn't pick up, not yet. Not while my heart was still raw from the years of being brushed aside. I set down the mug and went to the window. The view outside had changed since I last paid attention. The neighborhood felt quieter, gentler, like it was waiting for me to finally step into my own story. I felt a rush of both fear and excitement. Change was scary, but staying stuck was suffocating. I could almost see myself moving through this new chapter, stepping into a life that was mine entirely. Then came Ruby's text. My granddaughter. She said, "Grandma, want to grab ice cream, just us." My heart fluttered, hope, tenderness, a reminder that love could still feel uncomplicated, still feel real. I couldn't help the smile that spread across my face. Maybe I was finally learning what it meant to be loved without conditions, without expectations, without the endless performance of being the perfect mother, grandmother, wife. I decided right then, I would take small steps, but they would be my steps. I pulled out a notebook and started jotting down everything I wanted. Baking for fun, joining a local painting class, even volunteering at the community garden. Little things, but things that would slowly stitch together the life I had almost forgotten I deserved. And maybe, just maybe, I could even rebuild a relationship with Alex without losing myself in the process. I sat back, closing my eyes, feeling the warmth of the sun on my face. A tear slipped down my cheek, not of sadness, not regret, but a kind of quiet relief. This was the first moment I felt like me again, unburdened, ready to reclaim my space, my joy. And just as I thought I could finally breathe, a knock at the door made me jump. Who could it be? Could it be someone from my past, or maybe someone ready to walk this new journey with me? The story wasn't over yet, and honestly, I had no idea what came next, but that maybe was the most thrilling part of all. Wait until you see what happens when I finally open that door. You won't believe who's standing. My hand trembled as I reached for the doorknob. My heart was pounding like a drum in a parade I didn't want to be in. Who could it be? Someone from the neighborhood? A mail carrier with bad news? Or was it Alex? Sigh, the thought alone made my chest tighten. I took a deep breath, whispered a quiet, "Okay, I got this," and pulled the door open. And there she was, Ruby, my Ruby. She stood there with that mischievous grin I remembered from when she was 8, holding a small ice cream cone like it was a treasure. "Grandma, I didn't want to come in without asking," she said, fidgeting with her sleeve. But the moment I saw her, all the heaviness from the past month seemed to melt, just a little. "Come in," I said, my voice softer than I expected. She stepped inside, careful not to spill her ice cream, and plopped down on the couch. "It's really nice to see you smile again," she said, looking me straight in the eyes. My throat tightened and I had to swallow hard, or just hearing her say that made me realize how long I'd forgotten what it felt like to connect without expectation, without all the messy family drama hanging over me. We talked for hours, or maybe minutes, I couldn't tell. Time didn't exist when Ruby was around. She told me about school, her friends, and the silly things she'd gotten into. I laughed so hard I almost spilled my tea. Ha, I hadn't realized how much I'd missed just being silly with someone, no pretense, no performance. Then she paused, her eyes softening. "Grandma, are you really okay? I mean, without everyone else." My heart clenched. The truth was raw. I was okay, better than okay. I was alive in a way I hadn't been for years. But could I explain that without hurting her feelings or making her feel like she needed to choose sides? I sighed and decided to be honest. "Ruby, I'm finding my own way and it feels scary but good. I'm learning to take care of me." She smiled, reached for my hand and squeezed it. "I like this new you," she said quietly. And there it was, a small, perfect acknowledgement that maybe, just maybe, the world hadn't completely forgotten me. Maybe I didn't have to fight everyone else to feel alive. My life could be my story again, page by page. Just as I was letting myself sink into this moment, the doorbell rang. I froze. Sigh, of course, right. The universe wasn't done testing me. Ruby looked at me, her eyebrows raised. "Do you want me to get it?" she asked. I shook my head. No, I wanted to face this myself. I walked slowly to the door and peeked through the window. My stomach dropped. It was Alex, my son, with a bouquet of flowers and that awkward, nervous smile I knew so well. He looked different. Older, softer, maybe even regretful. My mind raced. Should I let him in? Could I trust that things wouldn't just fall back into the same old pattern of being overlooked, brushed aside? Ruby gave me a tiny, encouraging nod. That little gesture reminded me I wasn't stepping back into the past. I was standing at the edge of a new chapter, and I could choose how it started. Heart thumping, I unlocked the door, took a deep breath, and opened it wide. Alex froze for a second, then said, "Mom, I messed up. I want to try to make things right. I know I can't undo the past, but He stopped, and I held up a hand. Sigh, we both knew this wasn't going to be simple. But maybe, just maybe, it could be something real this time. And right then I realized something. Life doesn't hand you perfect moments, you make them, and I was ready to make mine. Wait until you see how this conversation changes everything, and why one choice tonight could flip my whole life upside down. I closed the door behind Alex and took a shaky breath, feeling the tension crawl out of my shoulders. He stood there, flowers in hand, looking nervous and smaller somehow. Smaller, like the boy I used to know who had once needed me for everything. Sigh, I realized how much time had passed, how many years of silence, disappointment, and bruised feelings had stacked between us. I know I hurt you," he started, voice trembling. "I didn't see how much I was taking from you. I was selfish, and I'm sorry." Or hearing those words made a lump rise in my throat. Part of me wanted to cry and part of me wanted to scream. Why now after all this time? But Ruby tugged my sleeve, giving me that little nudge of reassurance. Maybe it was time. I sat down at the edge of the couch and looked at him. Alex, I've spent so long trying to be the perfect mom, the perfect grandmother, the perfect everything for everyone, and I forgot to take care of myself. I laughed softly, shaking my head. Can you believe that? I said, half teasing, half weeping. I spent decades baking, worrying, giving, and I forgot that my own heart mattered. He knelt down beside me, eyes brimming with tears. I know, Mom, I see that now, and I want to try, not to fix the past, I know we can't, but to be part of your life without stepping on it. My chest tightened, a mixture of hope and fear twisting together. Could I really trust him? Could I let him in without losing myself again? Ruby, perched nearby with her ice cream, looked between us and whispered, "You can do this, Grandma." Or that little voice reminded me that this wasn't about perfection, it was about connection. Real, messy, honest connection, and maybe that was enough. We spent hours talking, honestly for the first time in years. We laughed, we argued gently, we remembered old times and acknowledged the hurt we had both carried. Each word felt like a brick in rebuilding a bridge that had almost crumbled completely. By the time evening settled over the house, there was a fragile peace in the room, a peace that felt earned, not given. Then Alex stood, brushing off his jeans. "Mom, I know I have a lot to prove. I'll take it one step at a time. Can we start over?" My heart swelled, a mixture of pride and relief. I smiled, reaching for his hand. "Yes, one step at a time." Sigh, it felt like exhaling after holding my breath for decades. Later, after Alex left, Ruby and I sat together, sharing a quiet laugh about something silly that had happened earlier. I realized that life didn't need to be perfect to feel beautiful. My journey wasn't over, but I had reclaimed it. I had space, independence, and the courage to live authentically, and the people I loved could only join me if they respected that. As I poured myself a cup of tea, I looked around my new home. The apartment wasn't huge, but it was mine. Every corner whispered freedom, every shelf a small testament to choices made for myself. I could hear Ruby's laughter echoing from the next room, a promise that the bonds I valued most would now grow in honesty and joy. That night I sat by the window, watching the city lights flicker, and whispered a quiet thanks, to myself, to Ruby, to the life I was finally ready to embrace. Sigh, it had been a long road, full of hurt, courage, tears, and laughter, but I had arrived, not to perfection, not to someone else's idea of happiness, but to my own. And as I closed my eyes, I felt it, freedom, love, and a sense of self that no one could take away. This was more than a new chapter, it was my life reclaimed, and honestly, I was ready for every single moment it had to offer. Wait until you see what Ruby and I plan next, because this is just the beginning of a life lived on our own terms.